podcast.
I've been thinking about Berlin. Not the band, I mean the city of Berlin. A city which I think I have visited twice. Both times on tour, both memorable, both very, very different circumstances. The first time was with the Sarah Smith Band in 2017, the first tour we did in Europe. And we had gigs booked in Berlin, one I think, and then maybe a couple in Poland, kind of back to back to back. And we wound up canceling all of those gigs because we were so damn sick. If you know the lore of that tour, if you have read the November book that I published, that Sarah and I published about that tour, you'll know that the virus of the van pretty much became a character in the book. And there were lots of characters in that story. One of the great things about touring is all of the amazing characters you meet along the way. Who springs most readily to mind from that tour was Anna in the bar in Vienna. This girl, we were in Vienna, we played a gig at this really nice club in Vienna one night, and we went out, Ken and Denny and me, looking for something to do. It was an early gig. We played dignified early gigs a lot of the time on those tours, which I really came to appreciate. And after the gig was over, we're fired up, right? We are three werewolves in Vienna, the most beautiful city I've ever seen, although I didn't know that yet. I don't think we had been downtown yet, where the real magic of Vienna hits you like a sledge, much like the virus of the van hit us. After the show, the three of us go out and we're looking for something to do on the streets of Vienna. And we were kind of not exactly in the outskirts, but not downtown, maybe the suburbs. And nothing to do. Nothing open. There was nothing. There was nowhere. I think there was a McDonald's that was maybe closed. And so we wandered around the neighborhood just a couple of blocks. Then we turned around like, there's nothing to do here, man. This is weird. And so there was a little bar underneath our hotel. Beautiful hotel, by the way. Our billets in a lot of those places were just fantastic. I've said before that when you're a band on tour and they say that you're going to stay at the band accommodation, in North America, you kind of brace yourself for the worst. Not the sort of place you want to shine a blue light, if you know what I mean. And so we heard more than once in the early days of that tour, yeah, we're staying at the band accommodation, meaning the venue's got to deal with the hotel or whatever, where bands stay as they come through town. In North America, that's a bloody nightmare most of the time. In Europe, fabulous, right? The hotels that we stayed at that were part of the deal, part of the band accommodation, for the most part were terrific. And so they were in Vienna. And, in a lot of these places, they're ancient, right? They're old buildings. They're charming. They're cool. Just really, really interesting places to stay. Clean, safe, really nice, as opposed to the vermin-infested places you tend to get into in North America. That's another story. So we go to the bar beneath our hotel in lieu of any other place to go. And sitting at the bar is this blonde girl. She's younger than us, but it was like something out of a really cool indie movie, right? Here's this really cool girl sitting at the bar. It's Europe. The three Canadian werewolves sit down. We start talking to this girl. She's telling us all about her life and her dreams. She said to me at one point that I need to visualize myself playing on the biggest stages in the world. And it was just a really, really cool moment. You know, one of these amazing characters that are in and out of your life in a heartbeat, but they leave this impression. 8 years later, I still think of Anna at the bar in Vienna, one of those characters. Well, the virus of the van was also a character in that book. And the villain of the piece was the virus of the van, the V of the V. And days after we arrived in Europe, it was November of 2017, Sarah might have already had it and she was there before us, and she may not have been showing the signs yet. But very quickly after we arrived, this virus just tore through the van and knocked us on our asses. It was just brutal. Like a real, just like a, I don't even know how to describe it. It's not like it was a flu. It's not like we were throwing up. It wasn't a nausea thing, but it was just, you were just hit like a truck hit you, man. Like you were just knocked on your butt and it took your voice. And that's going to be a problem if you're a band on tour, right? Sarah's voice just got taken. She couldn't even speak, let alone sing. And so by the time we got to Berlin for that part of the tour, it was like, we can't do this. Sarah can barely walk. We're all just on our butts, man. It was brutal. It was so difficult. And this is what you run into a lot on the road because you're probably not sleeping great. You're keeping odd hours. You're up late a lot of the time because you're playing gigs and then you're packing up gear and you're loading out and maybe you're driving or not after the gig. Sleeping is not great. You're jet lagged. In my case, it takes like 2 weeks to start sleeping again. I really struggle at the beginning of one of those tours. And you're probably not eating the best a lot of the time, although I will say that on those tours, we were fed pretty well in most of the places we went to, but not sleeping. Eating's not great. A lot of travel. You're run down, you're tired, then you're amped up to play a show. It's like I always say, when you're a normal person and you drive 5 or 6 hours to a destination, the hard part is over, right? The exertion is over. You've done the drive. Then you get to the place you're going and you put your feet up and you enjoy yourself. Well, if you're a band on the road, you drive the 5 or 6 hours, the work hasn't begun yet, right? Then you've got to load in all your stuff. You've got to sound check. You've got to play a gig, which requires all of this energy. Then you've got to tear it all down. You've got to load it out, at least at our level. You know, Metallica shows up. Their stage is done. Their instruments are ready. Somebody else has done it all, right? When the show's over, they exit and somebody handles all of the labor. When you're at our level, that's you, man. And so it's late nights. A lot of cases, it's early mornings because you might have a 10-hour drive the next day, especially in North America. It's like, okay, we got into our hotel at 2 a.m. We got to be up at 6 to make it to the next gig. It's a lifestyle that is very demanding on you physically, very demanding on you mentally. It takes a lot of fortitude. I know that touring looks really exotic and fun, and it is. And if it's in your blood and you're a road dog, you love it anyways, right? It's all part of the experience, and I'm antsy. I'm itchy to do it again. It's been a while. I haven't been on the road since 2021. I would like to be on the road again. That's another story. I will read to you from the November book. This is my entry called Berlin. Berlin 1, actually, because I did 2 Berlin entries. You recall that this was originally a tour blog, so it's written in the language of blogs. Short post this time. I could only write about the hours when I was awake, and there weren't many yesterday. Therefore, I can provide only a hazy account of our drive to Berlin, and a few moments in the city that I think actually happened. We continue to fight the virus of the van. Yesterday, Sarah could barely speak. I zombied around in the back seat from Eisenach to Berlin, zoning in and out of our world and some alternate reality. There was a gremlin on the wing. Ken had 7 arms and 10 heads. I'm pretty sure it will prove to be our darkest day of the tour, but still we had reasons to smile. First and foremost, we're on tour in Europe. So hopeful I was then. So much a silver linings kind of guy. But I was trying real hard, at least publicly, to present because I was aware of the privilege of being on the road. You know, it was quite a novelty, and it still is. But I recognized that to complain about it would have been unseemly, and so I didn't. And it's important not to. I mean, I've talked before about words having power. The things you say, even in jest, carry with them some kind of karmic weight, you know. And so to have complained a lot about being sick or being tired or whatever, I think that just invites some darkness in, and we didn't want to do that. And so particularly on the blog, I was trying to write positively and with great enthusiasm, which was not fake, but sometimes maybe a little bit forced. So we canceled the Berlin show. And it's interesting because Ken and Danny and I were just vertical enough to be able to kind of hang out. Like Sarah went to bed. As soon as we got to the hotel in Berlin, she was done. And we were guests at this hotel of the Dahl brothers. And they run, at least at the time, they ran entertainment at this hotel in the city, right? And they did this celebrity impersonation show. And they, the Dahl brothers, were the Blues Brothers. At the time, the only Blues Brothers tribute act that was actually endorsed by the Blues Brothers themselves. So that's kind of a big deal. I'm not a huge Blues Brothers guy, but these guys were really killing it. And then they had somebody doing Whitney Houston and somebody doing Adele. I feel like they had a Madonna maybe. And they were terrific. Like, these people were bloody great. And so Ken and Denny and I went to check out the show. And then later I had, I don't know if it was breakfast maybe the next morning with Whitney Houston and Adele. Pretty friggin' cool, man. And you feel as though you're leading, as I said in the book, kind of a charmed existence when you're sitting at a table in Berlin having dinner with Whitney Houston and Adele. And then the next day we were supposed to be traveling, but we couldn't. So Ken and Denny and I went off into the city to check out Berlin, which is just a cool city. It's a European capital. Of course, it's a cool city. Graffiti everywhere. Europe is just covered in graffiti. It's a real idiosyncrasy, but it's really cool stuff. Like, a lot of it is very, very interesting and cool. And the cities are just plastered, at least in sections, with all of this graffiti art, which is kind of neat. And so we're in the midst of all of this incredible history. It's Berlin, man. And we wound up going to the mall because I was looking for a drum rug because I had lost my drum rug somewhere along the way. For the uninitiated, when you're a drummer, you need to carry a rug with you because a lot of time you'll play a room and the stage will be wood or some other smooth material, and your kick drum will just slide away on you unless you've got a carpet to set it on. So have a drum rug with you. I lost mine somewhere along the way. Had to get something else, and so we went to the mall in lieu of going to the Reichstag or any of the other amazing places to see, the Brandenburg Gate, at least that time. And it was memorable for the virus of the van and our first experience of Berlin. The second time we went, I don't know, 2019 maybe? I can't remember. We didn't play a lot of gigs in Berlin for whatever reason. A lot of the gigs we played were in smaller towns that you haven't heard of, but they had venues that would accommodate us. We played some of the big cities, like we did play Hamburg several times, probably more than any other city. And Stuttgart and Dresden, I feel like we played. And we did play Berlin a couple times, but not a whole lot of gigs in Berlin. But the second time, well, I forgot about Katerina the dancer. I mean, the stuff's coming back to me as I'm talking about it. And I'll explain in a minute why I'm talking about it. That night, when we went to the mall, we got back to the hotel, Dahl brothers, Sarah was vertical. They were like, hey, let's go out. Let's go have dinner someplace. We went to this fabulous Thai restaurant, accompanied by a dancer from Russia called Katerina. How exotic is all of this? A dancer from Russia called Katerina. And she had apparently been married at some point to a guitar player from Europe. I mean the band this time, not the geography. So an ex of one of the members of Europe somewhere along the line. Amazing Thai food and hot tea, which was great for our sick, bloody bodies. Oh, man. Another character, right? Katerina, Anna at the bar. Another just character that comes to mind as I think about those touring days. Second time around is memorable because Ken got stung by a bee. We went, again, Ken and Denny and me, to some pastry shop because I'm a pastries guy. And a bee got up Ken's pant leg and just went at him. Ken's banging away at his shin, screaming because there's a bee stinging him. It was horrendous. And we were supposed to play this room that had like an outdoor courtyard with a stage, but it was raining or it was cold or something. And so we moved the gig inside and we rocked that joint. I just remember distinctly we rocked that joint. I have a friend named Kyle who was playing professional hockey in Germany for Berlin at the time. And he came, and I think maybe some other people from the hockey team came, and we just rocked this little club, and Ken got stung by a bee. And that was our second experience of Berlin. So I spent a little bit of time there, and I'm talking about this because I'm thinking about going back. I'm toying with, I'm probably less than 50% on this, but I'm toying with, and I've actually been investigating, returning to Berlin as a solo traveler to see Ghost. Ghost, Scaletta, the record is coming out imminently. They released the second single, which is called Lacrima, I want to say. Lacrima. Ghost often has inscrutable titles. This one is Latin, Lachryma, which I'm told means tear in Latin. And what a great song. I don't understand, all right? Tobias Forge, as I've said before, if he's writing all this himself, he's beyond a genius. He's maybe the greatest rock writer in the world right now. I mean, he just keeps banging out these incredible songs. And so it is with Lacrima, the second single from Scaletta. And it's just so good, man. It's got that 80s vibe. The last couple records have had this kind of 80s rock vibe. That's to a certain extent alienated a lot of the original Ghost fans who were way more into the 70s Sabbath, Deep Purple vibe that they had on the first few records. The last couple have been distinctly 80s hard rock sounding, and so it is with the new one, but it's got this amazing riff. He's a master of really hooky riffs, and the riff on this song, the main riff, is just killer, man, and it kicks in. It's chugging, it's heavy, but then it's got this anthemic sing-along chorus. Tobias is a bloody master, and I really love that song. It's growing on me more and more all the time, and I'm stoked about the record. I'm stoked about Papa 5, Perpetua. Now, a lot of people suggest that the name Perpetua means he's going to be Papa forever, but I have learned to expect nothing and to always be surprised by Ghost. None of that matters. The point is they've released a bunch of tour dates and none of them are in Canada. And so, as I build this new solo life of mine, solo travel is going to be part of it. I just did the cruise with Kay. That is not solo travel, but part of it was. And now I'm looking at where can I go see Ghosts in Europe. And with my schedule and gigs and work and everything, initially Paris was on the radar. Paris, a city I've also visited twice and really love. I got engaged to be married in Paris on an empty subway car, which is also something out of an indie movie, much like Anna at the Bar in Vienna. Many, many, many years ago that happened. I've twice been to Paris, and I really love Paris. Paris is the 1700s. It's just, there are sections of the city that are just so, it's like Vienna in that sense, just old and breathtaking and beautiful. And the Arc de Triomphe, and of course the Eiffel Tower, which is not nearly as tall as you think it is, but still really cool to see. And the Louvre and the Musée d'Orsay and all that stuff. I mean, Paris is freaking fantastic. And I thought, well, let's go to Paris, man. Let's just go to Paris. It's one of the cheapest capitals to fly to that was available on this tour. And just doesn't work with my schedule. Just couldn't quite sort that out. So what's the other option? The other option is Berlin. And we know that I've been working on my Deutsch and ich lerne ein bisschen Deutsch. And we're thinking about maybe we're toying with this notion, this idea, this fantasy maybe of moving to Europe. Germany is one of the places that would be on the radar for that. It's like, why not go to Berlin? Why not go? And since you can't catch Ghost in Canada, at least they haven't announced that you can, why not go? And the primary reason to not go is it's expensive, man. Then you get into this YOLO thing, and then you look around the world and you feel as though it could all go under at any moment. It's like, do you plan for a future at this point? I know a lot of young people feel that way. I have friends who teach university and people who work at universities, and it's pretty much universal that the young kids, whatever gen we're at this point, don't seem to care all that much at all about their studies. It feels as though there is no future, and whatever they're getting trained to do or qualified to do, there aren't any jobs anyways, and a house is $800 million, and what's the friggin' point? There's a certain nihilism that settles in upon them, and I sense that too a bit. I feel it a little bit myself, and I have to be a little bit careful because the nihilism will bring you down, and I have felt myself drifting a little bit. I can confess that to you. We're being confessional on this podcast. I want to be real. I want to be honest. I've been in a low mood. All right, I've been in a low humor lately. Last week, particularly the last few days, part of it was struggling to come up with something to talk about on this podcast, and it always really pulls me down when I struggle with an idea. And then part of it is, of course, all of the circumstances I don't need to tell you about that are happening in my life at this moment. Now, there's a lot of heavy stuff, and I spend way too much time still going down political rabbit holes and getting upset about it and indulging that anger. And my therapist had an interesting question, which was, what is that anger telling you, right? If I watch something happen somewhere in the world politically that really upsets me, what is it saying? What value of mine is being attacked here? What belief do I hold that's being violated by whatever that political action is? I still haven't reached a level where I can separate myself from that. Okay, I still am personally invested in a lot of this stuff. I'm still egoically invested in a lot of this stuff because I'm a neophyte. I'm not great at the spiritual side, and this is another crucible, and it's drowning me, to be honest. That's only part of it. Okay, there's been heavy stuff going on, struggling with content for the podcast this week, and digging into the possibility of maybe going to this ghost gig in May in Berlin. And it's just difficult. It's difficult to organize that. It's difficult to reckon with the finances of it. And, it's just been a heavy time. And so I've fallen a little bit down, and you have to be somewhat vigilant in your thinking and in your speaking. And I've struggled a bit. Okay, I've struggled a bit lately in the past week or so with just being in a low mood. And so part of me wants to lift myself up by flying away on a jet plane. And I might. I'm less than 50% on this. Just because it's a lot, and I haven't done a lot of solo traveling. It's a little bit intimidating. And, there's the financial side of things. And I don't want to adopt this kind of negative thinking. I don't want to adopt this fearful thinking. There is a school of thought that says in order for money to flow, in order for abundance to flow, you've got to push it out into the world, right? Holding on to it stops the flow. I haven't quite got there. I haven't quite got there in my thinking. You got to spend it. You got to send it out in order for it to come back. And I don't know. I'm just toying with the notion of going to Berlin. And on a certain level, that's a very exciting thought. And then I think about the memories I have of that place. I think about just being in Europe again and how fun that would be. And I think about a story. Sometimes in the face of this sort of thing, you got to think about what a story it would be. It's nobody ever, they say, gets to their deathbed and wishes they had worked more. At least most people. What about being on your deathbed and saying, back in 25, I went to Berlin by myself to see Ghost. That's a story, right? That's something you remember fondly. That's an indie movie. There's no point to any of this, by the way. I've set this podcast up so that every week I try to deliver some kind of wisdom or insight. Truth is, I'm not House, okay? I don't have an epiphany every week. Just in time to save the day. I wish I did. It would make the content here much easier to produce. If there's anything, though, I can give you, is that one of the cures for a low mood is to do that thing you want to do. In my case, it was record a podcast. What happens a lot of times, you get into a low mood, what tips you into a full-on depression is your self-talk, right? And the way you approach this low mood. What happens to me is I get in a low mood, I don't want to do things. I don't want to do anything. The things that I enjoy become passionless for me, right? I don't want to play the drums. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to work out. I just get into this low space, and very quickly my self-talk goes with it. I start attacking myself for not doing things. I start adopting this kind of nihilistic view of the world, like what's the point? Nothing's working, yada, 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 going to the garden to eat worms. And I don't mean to make light of that self-talk because it's heavy and it really, really damages a lot of people who struggle with it, myself included. But I can very quickly begin to get into this very negative headspace, this very negative thinking, and I don't want to do stuff. And that just makes it worse, right? Not doing the podcast makes it worse because it feeds into this false perception that I'm no good, right? That I'm not good enough, that I'm a loser, and you don't do the thing, and then it perpetuates that even more. And then you just begin to feel worse and worse and worse about it. And it's not a super productive thing. I'm savvy enough, and I've been through this enough times to know that if you possibly can, you should, and you will feel better about having done it, because one of the causes of the low mood is this war you have with yourself about whether you can or want to do a thing. You know, Abraham Hicks would say your negative emotions are your ego disagreeing with your higher self, right? So my higher self is like, of course you're capable of doing the podcast this week, and you can and you should. And my ego, which is being wrapped up in this nihilism and this negative thinking, is like, no, I can't. No, I don't want to. And this negative emotion is caused by the friction between those 2 points of view. Anytime you feel angry or sad or depressed, it's your ego out of balance with your true alignment and your true self. You can believe that or not believe that. It's up to you, but it's an interesting way to look at things. And so one of the ways to pull yourself out of a low mood is, if you can, summon the fortitude to do the thing. In my case, it is make the podcast, even if it's not the greatest episode. And if this is your first episode of the show, sorry, man. There are better ones. Go back and listen to them. There are more profound and poignant ones. Go back and listen to them. Now, there's a point in time where I would feel myself slipping into the low mood for whatever reason. And I was not conscious enough. I was not experienced enough. I was not aware enough to recognize that the way out of it is to do the thing. I would not do the thing. And then I would feel bad about myself, and that would perpetuate the low mood. That would affirm what my negative perception says about my value or my ability, right? And so that would sink me further. And then I would get into a depression. And then all of a sudden, everything in your whole life feels bad and negative and pointless, right? Your job or your work or your dreams or whatever. It's like everything just becomes pointless. And that sinks you further because it's not true, but it's your perception of it. At war with your higher self, which sees only potential. When I was younger, I would get into the low mood and I would surrender into the low mood and indulge it. And it would just drag me down further. And I've learned as I've gotten older and a little bit more savvy that one of the ways to confront that is to push through if you can. All right. It's not always the right answer. All right. Sometimes it is best to just sit with the feelings, and you're going to have to go through that. But I've recognized that there are circumstances where I'll feel better if I do the thing. Same thing like if you're in a low mood and you make yourself go to the gym, if you can summon the courage to go to the gym, even for a little bit, and just do something, feel productive, shift yourself out of that energy, out of that mindset, or sit down at the drums. I don't want to practice. I don't want to play. The low mood says there's no point in it. The low mood says it's pointless. I'm not good enough. I'll never be good enough. I'll never get the sorts of gigs I want. And then you get sucked down into that vortex. You get a little bit more savvy. You're like, okay, go sit at the drums for 10 minutes. Just go sit it for 10 minutes and play. Hold on to that little piece of action, that little piece of doing. And it can flip the switch, right? Sitting down to do this podcast right now, even though this is not a great episode, it's like you're still in the game, right? It's like you're kicking at the darkness, man, till it bleeds daylight. And sometimes in life, you have to do that, right? Sometimes in life, you got to kick at the darkness. I've talked about this a little bit before, like, because these low moods, they can crush you, man. They can pull you down in such a heavy way. And if you're prone to it like I am, it becomes a problem very quickly. And you sink into a depression, and it can be brutal to pull yourself out of it. People go days, months, years sometimes in a depression that they cannot pull themselves out of. And one of the ways to avoid that is to recognize the signs early and have some tools to not sink that low. And action is a great antidote to everything. Action, socializing, all of this stuff is a great antidote. And it's like the depression knows that. It's like the low mood knows that. And it makes you reluctant. It's so reluctant. If you're in a low mood and somebody calls you up and said, hey, let's go have a drink somewhere, the low mood says absolutely not. It's the last thing on earth I want to do, right? Because the low mood knows that if you go out with somebody and do that, you're likely to shift the energy and you're likely to be pulled out of that dark headspace. You're going to feel better. In a weird way, a low mood will try to preserve itself that way. And I've learned one of the things to do. I was feeling really bad about not making the podcast. And so I summoned up what little courage I have to try to make a podcast. Not a great one, but one. And at the end of it, I can feel like, okay, I did it. I don't have to feel bad about not having done it anymore. And then it lifts just a little bit. You know, it rises just a little bit with the tide. And so I guess in a certain sense, I do have a point this week. Even though I'm telling fun stories about Berlin and Ghost, the point is combating that low mood with action. And it can be the hardest bloody thing to do because if it locks onto you, the last thing you want to do in the world is anything, right? Because you don't see the point in it. You don't feel capable of it. You become really wrapped up in this feeling of nothing mattering, nothing being important. And it's an illusion, right? It is a false perception, but it's so convincing and so powerful. And if you have a history with it, you become frightened of it. You can become frightened of the low mood when it comes. It's like you feel an illness coming on, like the virus of the van. You feel kind of a mental virus coming on, an emotional virus. Just like, oh, shoot, I'm in a low mood. I know that feeling. For me, it sits right in my heart. Sits right in my heart, this kind of blackness, this kind of rotten feeling. It's like, oh no, I sense it coming. And when I was younger, it would just carry me away. Now I'm a bit older and a little more savvy. It's like, okay, there's ways we can deal with this, right? There are ways that we can fight back. Make a podcast. Make a lousy podcast, but make a podcast nonetheless. And it's like you held on to your territory just a little bit. And that thing that was bothering you doesn't have to bother you now because you did it. And then you draw a little bit of strength from that. So if you're struggling with the low mood, take a look at the thing that you're probably most reluctant to do because that's the one that the low mood knows might lift you out. And summon your fortitude. You don't want to practice your drums because you don't see the bloody point because the low mood tells you there isn't a point in it and you'll never get anywhere. Go play one song. Go play one song. And then a lot of times that one song will lift you into another and another and another. All of a sudden you're practicing and you did it. You don't want to go to the gym because what's the point anyways? Go. Go even for a walk. Something physical. Something that is you not being held down by the low mood. It's just a little bit of pushback. And the low mood is a bit of a bully, man. You know what they say about bullies? They're only bullies until you push back. So it is with depression sometimes, all right? This is not every time. It's not every time, and I get that. But a lot of the time, you can push back. and it will vaporize. You can push back and it will go away. And you can feel good about yourself for having done so. And you can draw a little bit of courage from having done so. So if you came this far in this podcast, I thank you, because you've watched kind of depression in real time, in a certain sense, and one way in which to deal with it. That's a pretty vulnerable thing, but maybe it's useful for you. And I do want, even if I'm just talking about road stories in Berlin, I do want this podcast to be of some service to you. And, it proves to be of some service to me in this moment. And I'm going to leave it there because it's getting late and I got to edit this thing. But I hope you enjoyed my Berlin stories. And maybe, just maybe, in a few weeks, I'll have a podcast episode about another trip to Berlin. We will see. We will see. Until then, good things really do happen when you put yourself out there. That's one of the reasons I've been to Berlin a couple times, man. If you're in that low mood and you worry about it sinking further, take some action, okay? Some even simple, quiet, short action. Kick at it. Kick a little hole in it, man, and it will help lift you out of it, okay? I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for all the congratulations on the 6th anniversary. That warmed my cockles very deeply. I do appreciate it. I do appreciate your support. I'm going to shutting up, except to say, hey, kids. I'll check you later. Yeah. Crying over someone like you. I'm done crying. Hope you're feeling it tonight.